Do you feel nothing? Like, no matter how good things are in your life, it doesn't excite you. But that kind of is also good because nothing hurts you either. In this video, I want to discuss how you get into this emotionless state. I know this because as a highly sensitive person, I was in it for 19 years of my life, along with the 3 major changes I made to get out of it. It took me years of introspection and research to discover the true cause of this numbness. If you want to do that in just minutes, I've created this free tool that helps you do that by answering some questions. More on that later. So what exactly is numbness? It's important to understand this key feature of numbness that most highly sensitive people miss. Emotional numbness does not mean that you feel no emotion at all. It can be that in certain extreme cases, but for most people, it's this baseline feeling of being disconnected from your emotions, with some emotions here and there. There's a very interesting reason this happens. I'll get to that in a minute, but let me explain numbness further with my own example. 6 years ago, before I started on my healing journey, I used to feel completely empty inside. Again, it's not like I didn't have fun or laugh with my friends here and there, but on an average, I felt disconnected with my emotions, especially the negative or unpleasant ones. The only time I remember registering an unpleasant emotion in the body was when I felt overwhelming anxiety during public presentations in school. And I could feel my heartbeat faster and I could hear it in my ears. So the biggest sign of numbness is a disconnect from emotions, but that further leads to symptoms like, number one, purposelessness. Being numb and trying to figure out what your purpose is like having no taste buds and trying to figure out what you like eating. Because emotions are the taste buds that tells you what feels right at a gut level. The second is living on autopilot. I used to feel like this log just flowing wherever the river takes me without a choice of his own. The third one is alexithymia, which is being colorblind to your own emotions. So if I felt guilty and someone asked me how am I feeling, I'd respond with a generic statement saying I feel like shit. The next is not feeling like yourself. So I had a client once and she told me she feels like she's seeing herself and her life from a third person perspective, almost like she's playing GTA. The next sign is anhedonia, where nothing feels pleasurable anymore. Not even food. A 2019 study showed how numbness affects both physical pleasures and pleasant emotions. The next is not being able to cry even when you feel sad and genuinely want to. Which brings me to thrill seeking. Because you don't feel anything, you start doing extreme shit to feel something. I remember for me, it was the thrill of going on risky treks. But what's the root cause of this emotional numbness? Picture the scenario. A runner ends up injuring his ankle, but there's no one to help him for at least another kilometer. So he pushed through, and when he reaches the hospital, the doctor is absolutely baffled by the fact that he could come this far, because turns out he had fractured the ankle and he shouldn't even be able to walk. The reason that happened is because his body releases chemicals that numbed the pain in his ankle so that he can reach the hospital and get the help he needed to survive. Same is the case with your emotions. When you feel overwhelming emotions as a child and your parent doesn't help you to process them, or worse, downright rejects them, your body releases similar chemicals to blunt this pain from those emotions so that you can survive, because you can't really handle those intense emotions on your own when you're young. This is what causes the trauma of childhood emotional neglect, and the tool I mentioned in the beginning helps you discover what sort of situations are overwhelming from the perspective of a child. As you answer these questions, a lot of your current situations start to make sense. Do check it out. When you repeatedly feel overwhelming emotions that you don't know how to deal with as a child or an adult, over time, your default state becomes that of numbness. But something doesn't make sense. If numbness is only there to save you from painful emotions, shouldn't you still feel the pleasant ones? The reason numbness blunts the happy emotions as well is because your emotions are like a pendulum. You cannot stop the swing of the pendulum on only one end. If you suppress it on the unpleasant end of the spectrum, by laws of physics, it also gets suppressed at the pleasant end. Now let's look at how you can start feeling again today. Somewhere along the journey, you learned that feeling emotions in the body is not safe for you. And that is why your system always numbs them. The way to heal then is to counter that and learn how to feel and process your emotions safely. Well, how do you do that? I've developed this framework which is proven to work with several of my clients. Before I get to that, it's important for you to understand that if you feel numb, there's nothing wrong with you. The fact that you're feeling numb does not mean that your system is broken. In fact, similar to the numbness in the guy's injured ankle, it shows that your system worked properly, perfectly to protect you in your childhood and is still working to protect you till date. You don't need to fight it. You just have to show the numbness that you don't need its help, its protection anymore. And it will start gradually turning off. But that's easier said than done. So let me share my framework with you. The outer circle is for finding your emotions. Because you're so disconnected from them, you have to start by actually finding these emotions in your body. So 6 years back, when I felt completely numb, I also was on a journey to improve my social skills. And for that, I started approaching people on the street. As a shy teenager, I used to be petrified to say hi to someone I didn't know randomly, which led to these intense feelings in my body. When I went out to socialize, I felt knots in my stomach, I felt like puking, and heard my heart beat like loud drums in my ears. Even though I was numb, doing something that was scary made me feel again. But that can't be a solution. You might be thinking, I want to feel better, and he's suggesting I scare the shit out of myself and feel worse. If we go back to the emotion pendulum, in numbness, it's like your pendulum is stuck in the middle. When I started approaching people, it was as if I am pulling the pendulum on the negative emotion end, which allowed it to swing to the other end as well. Try it out. Find something that is scary for you. It could be anything from approaching a stranger to singing in public. There must be something that is objectively safe that you can do, which still scares the shit out of you, no matter how numb you are. And when you do that thing, focus on what shows up in your body. Again, body is the bridge. Once you're able to start feeling these emotions, the next step is to get better at feeling those emotions. The easiest way to do that is to increase your emotional intelligence using this free app called How We Feel. It allows you to figure out what you're feeling under the numbness at any given moment. Because the truth is, you are feeling something. The only person who doesn't feel anything is a dead person. It's just the numbness that is blocking you, and you just have to pay enough attention and tune in. There's also a place for you to trace where you feel those emotions in the body, which improves your ability to feel inside the body. I won't go very deep into this because I recently made a video exclusively on this app, but if you can do these 30-second check-ins just 2 to 3 times a day, in only 3 months your emotional intelligence will skyrocket, which in turn will reduce the numbness in your body. And finally, you must have a healthy way to process emotions. There are dozens of ways that I discuss with my clients and suggest them, but I'll leave you with the one that is the easiest to start with. I call it emotional brain dump. Whenever I feel overwhelming emotions that I want to process, I take out my pen and paper and just go ham. I write whatever is going on in my head and body in terms of thoughts, emotions, and I just keep writing until my hands don't stop. The first time I did this, I felt so light. It was almost as if I was floating. And there's a ton of neuroscience to back up the power of journaling to process your emotions. So try it out. You'll notice the effect the very first time. If you want to heal this numbness from its very roots, click here to watch this video next, where I share my entire system for healing childhood trauma that I made after half a decade of research and healing.